Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone is well, safe, and healthy more than anything. And I know we're facing turbulent times here at Strategic Legacy Investment Group, Inc. We are actually still working here, making sure that we hold our ear to the ground and knowing what information is out there, what's going on in Los Angeles, more than anything for the company, for our investors, our projects, and our clients, which is very important that we keep going as well. So today with Mary, we saw a webinar this morning with LABC. The topic was COVID-19's impact on LA's economy virtual meeting. We're going to just discuss the summary bullet points of what they discussed on with these speakers, of course what they shared with us.
John Voight had explained to us that the hospitality, tourism, and travel were one of those that were greatly impacted by COVID-19. As you may know, Los Angeles is one of the largest destinations for travel, but as we're all aware, the virus is going to make the schedule for us. So what you'll hear from me are some projected timelines. Between what we understand is between 2019 and the first month of 2020, there were 50 million tourists that came through here. In March, the numbers fell considerably. We are looking, or they project that the 50 million in tourism will return sometime in 2023. The hotel occupancy is at 25% as of March moving forward. But what they discovered when they looked a little bit deeper was that it was some travel, but mainly first responders and medical staff. Some of the homeless have been able to take opportunity in this environment and have been housed there on a temporary basis. And most hotels projected to begin reopening in July. However, unfortunately, plans have changed since then. Most of the tourism that we'll see here lately will be done by the locals, day vacations, day traveling. Until middle of next year, it's projected to see a pickup in international tourism. One of the things that is being done to help increase tourism is at airports, or there's a plan in place where airports and airlines are creating a pre-check before boarding, the protocols for COVID-19. The convention center will be closed until August of this year, the end of August this year. There will be different events being created, different floor plans for safety measures. So there are some measures that they're taking to help increase the amount of tourism, but taking into in consideration the COVID-19 protocols. Some of the ones that are really hurting are the live concerts and events like that where there's a huge gathering. Sports. The governor has been talking about opening up for sports, but there's still nothing yet that we've heard concrete about that happening. Venues are creating strict guidelines in preparation. For example, the Staples Center is in the hopes that when they're allowed, they'll be prepared and ready to accommodate.
I'll be covering Stephen Chung's economy, international local trade, and the GDP conversation that he talked about. So he focuses on the LA County itself, LA City, and then a bit part of California. So focusing on Los Angeles County, he says within 4 to 5 weeks, 4 million has been claimed in unemployment insurance claims. 1 million filed within the LA County region for the last couple of months. He talked about the demographics of the people that were affected and that filed unemployment. He said 22% were Asian American claims, 90% African American, and 17.5% were Latin American. Just California itself, there's a 20% unemployment rate. In May, it's being foreseen that it's going to go up to 24% of an unemployment rate currently. Now he talked about the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach were one of the biggest trades that form import and export. He did mention that COVID-19 did have a huge, tremendous impact on the industry. He says 1 out of 9 employment jobs is in port trade, and they're more operated related. approximately 1 million jobs just in this region itself. He did discuss that a 6.3% decrease in volume just in Los Angeles in just trade alone and in job availability. He talked about there's a 17.3% decline in the port trade volume in Long Beach. And part of the reason is the cancellation in goods from the Asian trade. The first quarter, there was about 61 sailing cancellations. So based on what he was talking about is the orders that come in, right? And I guess that's what he was mentioning, that it's called sailing, I guess, when a shipment's coming in. And he said about 61 in the first quarter were canceled. And he says just for one sailing of that 61, just one, it attributes $400,000 each in revenue. So if you multiply that, that's the loss of revenue we've had just in California from the import and export, which is tremendous. In the industry, he says everything is changing. One of the hardest hit industry in the import-export has been what he referred to as fast fashion product that is primarily brought in from Asia into the United States, and that was hit the hardest. It had a 50% decrease in the fashion product line, and this is where I guess it affects us on most of our projects and construction. He said 69% decline in steel imports, and that this is a good indication what construction is going to look like and how it's going to be affected, which we're already seeing the effects that it's had on our projects and the delays, unfortunately. But overall, the imports and cargo, there's been a 15% decline, just as a general overall. He talked about Los Angeles alone produces $430 billion in trade in 2019. So imagine with COVID-19, a lot of things just went down. So how it's affecting the economy gives you a better recap and idea of what's going on. He did mention that LAX, a part that is the 4th busiest airport in the world, also has had a significant decrease in passengers and also as cargo capacity, because they also ship and bring and export. And you remember, you know, when you're on the 405, you do see the FedEx airplanes as well as transporting back and forth. There's over 100 billion worth of goods coming through LAX alone. So imagine that, that's a lot. 4.5 million jobs in the LA County region alone are dependent on import and export. 1 million unemployed is due to COVID-19. So that's been the studies that he's been looking at, the statistics. He said 24 to 25% unemployment is related to retail, arts, recreation, accommodation, food services, construction, manufacturing, and fashion. So the labor force unemployment filings, recreation, arts, and entertainment has a 45.3% filed unemployment. Food and accommodations had a 34% filing claims in unemployment. And most small businesses that attribute 93%, and those 93% have 20 employees or less, and then 86.9% have 9 or less employees, and they're considered as micro enterprises. And unfortunately, many of them do not have a savings to prolong themselves and a possibility that they will be out of business. So that's why the emergency fund that came about, and hopefully a lot of them were able to get it so they could sustain themselves through this time. He did talk about the education sector, how that affects us economically. Just international students alone, we have 160,000 student enrollments that pay out-of-state tuition. So he talks about how much in revenue that means for us. He mentioned that USC has the most Chinese international student enrollment, and international student revenue alone is $70 billion in California annually. So because the loss of the ability for them to travel and stay here, that income is pretty much lost for the time being. I was looking at doing some research based on what he was talking about. I saw a article in the LA Times that was actually printed out in February 20th of this year, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it's saying USC, the total cost of attendance for 2019 and 20, including housing, food, books, and materials, is about $77,459 per student. And just tuition alone is $57,256. So imagine that loss of revenue because of COVID-19. Now, the other thing he talked about that's posing an obstacle in the educational system of that revenue and income coming in is that because a lot of the classes have switched to online classes, there is a question if it's even worth it having to pay for that if they could just remotely study and not having to pay all that money. So in that sense, they're thinking, oh, well, why don't we save money? But it'll affect our economy in California. He did change into a positive note that the industries that have had an increase in spike has been the e-commerce and grocery shopping, because most people are actually shopping and cooking at home since restaurants are closed and not necessarily going out for the takeout. He does go back into trade, and that's later in the conversation of the webinar, but I thought it was just easier to just kind of sum up everything he said. He did talk about that CBRE is working on a guide for commercial office space, which Mary will be touching upon later on in one of the topics. And he was mentioning that prior to COVID-19, companies were looking into reshoring to more economic places to manufacture. So he kind of briefly talks about how even before all that was happening, and I guess the United States were going into a negotiation of trade with China, and I guess I don't remember, forgive me, I don't recall if he said that we did reach a resolution to that or not. But prior to that, a lot of the companies were thinking about coming back, bringing a portion of the manufacturing back to the United States to have more employment, the employment rate to go up higher. And then also partially going to places like Vietnam, and he mentioned other Asian countries that will probably be a little bit cheaper to manufacture goods as well. But now with that happening, we don't know what that's going to look like anymore. He does talk about that the Los Angeles GDP alone, just LA County, he says, is $1 trillion in revenue. So he said if we were to be our own country, we would be about the 18th, 19th largest economy in the world if we were a country. So how amazing is that? The vast of opportunity that we have here in Los Angeles, considering that all of our development projects are here, and Southern California, San Diego, with our senior housing projects as well. So I did a little bit of research based on what he was talking about the GDP. So it says the real gross domestic product is defined as an inflation-adjusted measure, reflects the value of goods and services produced in a given year, expressed in base year prices. The U.S. GDP decreased by 4.8% from the fourth quarter of 2019 to the first quarter of 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic. And that is information U.S. nationwide. I got this information from Statista.com. He talks about manufacturers' changes in trade, which we were talking about earlier. He says a lot of the manufacturers are practicing some risk mitigation measures. And he said 350,000 manufacturing jobs are at risk, but a possibility to bring back even more once everything goes back online after COVID-19. So that's a lot of people and why we're having a high unemployment rate, considering that trades have decreased, imports have decreased, and all these people that are losing their jobs as well. He did talk about like Tyson, that they had to close down because of the cases of COVID-19. So all these manufacturings having to take different protocols on how they're going to run their business. And then as well that how are they going to pivot in this situation to maintain money coming in the economy. One of the things that he talked about that they were looking into because of that situation in Tyson is looking into automation manufacturing. So I don't know how that would affect us and people that were employed doing this kind of work. That's going to be tough. We'll know down the line. Also, manufacturers are looking at secondary manufacturing capacities to pivot better in the changing industry. For the simple reason, again, they were talking about how in the fashion industry, people that were, say, making jeans, they were saying, okay, now they're making masks. He talked about another company, I think that he made the Bellagio fountains.
Yes.
He said that, and he says how they're also manufacturing a different kind of a mask also for protective for the medical facilities as well. I'm also going to cover, moving on now to Paul Audley, the film industry topic. So that was the end of Stephen's information on the GDP and where we're at economically in ports. So going back to Paul Audley, film industry topics. So he says that the film industry is funded on its own industry revenue. So the money it makes, it goes back into the industry, and that's how they prolong, and maybe Ricardo Moreno could attribute to that since he's also in the industry of film, television. He said that March, it took all the revenue to a halt. Like literally it completely stopped. So just a little information as what I found. This is based on 2018 numbers. So I couldn't find anything on 2019, but it says Hollywood is the famous epicenter of the U.S. film and television industries. The United States is one of the leading film markets worldwide, producing 871 films in 2018 in Los Angeles alone, and many of them are produced by Hollywood-based studios. So in 2018, ticket sales in North America generated over $11.89 billion in box revenue service. So imagine at that speed, I don't know what the 2019 looked like, but for him to say how it went to a halt, wow. Yeah. A lot of people completely out of job. He said, based on the overall employment, 6.1% of employment is directly related to film. So he attributed $260,000 jobs, not including the support businesses that provide for the film industry. And I'm pretty sure like the catering, when they're feeding the actors and the extras, lighting, camera, electrical, setup, I mean, you're on and on. He said 90% of those small businesses have less than 10 employees, and they are the most affected by the situation. He said in January, film and television industry had an uptick of 25% in revenue overall. So it looked like in the first quarter it had an 18% decrease overall because of COVID-19. So he says after March 20th, when the shutdown happened, it dropped to 0%.
Huge drop.
So it just makes me think about you driving in a car going 60 miles per hour, and that's kind of going slow, and you just pump the brakes. Imagine how everything it's like a crash for everybody, I guess. He said 32,500 people were working on location at the time, right before March 20th happened. He said they're waiting on, and there's expected to be a white paper report out by June 1st. And it's expected to describe and to explain how businesses in the film industry will be run on set from all unions and guilds, what safety measures they're going to take, and what precautions to take, especially for actors, since they're always face-to-face with the makeup artist, the crew, production, hair and makeup and stylist. So anything that has to do with film related, how are they going to interact with each other and how they're going to protect themselves during filming. So that's going to be kind of interesting how that's going to look also in the future. Now, as far as when the film industry is going to resume, it's an unknown date, unfortunately. They're still waiting on the guidelines, the guidelines that the governor is supposed to provide in a couple weeks or the end of this week. It is expected that Los Angeles might not be exempt because of the increase in number of COVID cases. So he talked about how they might be filming in other locations and not Los Angeles. So again, that goes back to how does that affect the economy in Los Angeles County alone.
Yes, Nadine Watt of Commercial Real Estate Topic kind of gave us some information that there was a loss of jobs. 1 out of the 4 jobs are small businesses around here, and they were most definitely impacted by COVID-19 due to the fact that, you know, they didn't have the resources or don't have the resources which 20% are retail. Of those small businesses, 20% are retail, 80% are restaurant employees that have lost their job. There's a good chance that many of them will not reopen, which means a loss of job. Even though, as Jennifer had stated, there would be a reduction. These will be more than likely be some of the jobs that may not return. Just to recap, many restaurants may not reopen and are completely and totally out of business. Long Beach is planning on having outdoor restaurants instead of help with to be able to help with social distancing measures, and are known to be holding outdoor lessons and risk of contacting COVID-19. Long Beach has a program they've had in effect for quite a long time now that I'm aware of. I happen to live out in that area, and one of the examples is that they will shut off the streets. They will have the vendors open late at night, so people are outdoors, which is good, a good thing that helps prevent COVID-19. You can walk up and down the street, go into a restaurant, you can sit down near the park, or you can eat out. But all of it is the thought of being out and outdoors on a Friday night, so it's good socializing. Obviously, in this case, they would have to take into consideration the COVID-19, the distancing, but nonetheless, that's an idea that and something that Long Beach has been doing for a little while, and I'm sure they will continue to do, adding the additional measures with COVID-19. Retail had already had change because of e-commerce, but still got a hit even more. As you know, many of the industries have been moving away from retail, brick and mortar, and are now looking into e-commerce. This forced a lot of individuals that had thought about it, were contemplating to move directly into that because there wasn't much of a choice. COVID-19 kind of gave them a big push. Groceries went up in revenue for the obvious reason. You had to go in, you had to stay indoors, so going to the groceries and buying more to cook more is more what a lot of people, including us,
we did.
Right?
Of course, we still
yes.
do. Food from
Obviously,
home.
yes. So revenue went up for grocery stores. Office space, things being considered is that they're looking at shrinking or providing more space to the employees. 1 to 10 may go to work, may work out of home. So coming into the office may not be something they do. One of the things that which I thought was kind of interesting, that they noted was that most people really do want to come back. You know, I think everybody's kind of tired of being indoors, locked in, and they need a change of pace. So, but they still see that some of that will still continue to happen, but you may be in the office 2 days out of the week, 1 day out of the week, versus 5 days out of the week, excuse me. And also the fact that employers are looking to provide social distancing, right?
Absolutely.
Turning co-working into small individual offices, where you see a lot of offices have converted to where you could see your coworker, kind of talk to your coworker, and now that may change, which would make it less density in the office. A high filtration AC filters more than likely is something that you'll see more of in the near future. Then we listened to the speaker, Adam Lane. He described how some of the things he was doing legislatively, that he was pushing down the pipeline to be able to get legislative relief funds made available to multi-residential units of 10 units or less. Some of the guidelines they were putting in there on the policy was, as long as they do not evict tenants, as long as they don't increase rents during the COVID-19, this may be something that you would be eligible for. So they're really pushing more relief for property owners, which I think is a great theme. Opening up more patio space for restaurants so that restaurants could serve more outdoors, having the air and less density within the building. Extending commercial business relief following the 6 months after shutdown. So whatever, I'm not sure exactly what it is right now, but extending it to 6 months down, which I think is also a great thing. I think that would help a lot of commercial businesses. Thursday, May 27th, the city will be discussing further measures of the relief, and to know more We offer an email which you will get. One of the things I would really like to see, those of you viewing this, is that you really look at the legislative piece, because I think that, not that the rest of this is not important, but I also think that it is important to become more proactive. If this is something they're able to push and it is beneficial for businesses, because I think businesses are going to need the legislative support. One of the things that they stressed was that this is one of the lessons learned is that there needs to be the intertwined support with our politicians and legislation, along with our business owners and property owners, so that we can all survive and move forward and figure out which is the best way to ensure that our economy begins to grow and continues to grow. And I thought that was important.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and the bullet points that we shared between Mary and myself about the LABC COVID-19 webinar. Just wanted to let you know, for you, most of you are most likely entrepreneurs, business owners. I hope this information that was shared and we're passing down to you to view today with the bullet points was very helpful. Feel free to ask us questions, give us a call. Property management, please contact Mary. Talk to her if you have any questions. If you have properties that maybe you're having difficulty in managing, they are a wonderful team and will take care of you properly. Also, for any of the questions in regards to finances, projects, call any of the executive circle. We're here to help you. I know there's scary times, but we try to keep ourselves well informed to make sure that we service you in the best way possible and give you the information that is needed the best way possible to the best of our ability and knowledge, considering that we're not full staffed right now. It's just a handful of us in the office. Now, also I want to invite you again to please go into our Family Financial Strategies website, TaxBridge Advisors, and Strategic Legacy Investment Group Inc. website as well. We have amazing, fresh, up-to-date financial information to increase your education on whatever that you're looking for on the financing, entrepreneurial business side. And please subscribe. Like us and subscribe and follow us.
One of the things I did want everybody to know, even though the environment has been challenging for everyone, is that we here at Strategic Legacy Management were able to maintain 85% rental collection. The standard industry right now in the environment is 80%, so I'd say that we weren't doing such a bad job. I thought that was important that you should know, even given the challenges we had with collection. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time that you have taken to sit down and watch this video.
We'll have a wonderful month, rest of May. See you in June.